March 2nd, 2013, informative speech. Haley Chester. The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever. By Jack Cousteau. For centuries, mankind have been discovering new ways to go beneath the surface of the ocean, and I plan on telling you the history of scuba diving. I have been a certified scuba diver for 1 year, and I'm certified in advanced scuba diving, and I'm a master diver. I have studied the history of scuba diving during all these courses, and now I plan to tell you about it. So scuba diving has been around for centuries, and it began in the early 1600s with a diving bell. So a German named Kessler invented this diving bell in 1616. So it was a bell-shaped thing, and they stuck it underwater, and there was an air pocket inside right here. And the diver could free dive down and do like a bunch of salvage work underwater, and then when he needed air, he'd go up and get air from the air pocket inside. And then moving on, the air pump was invented in the late 1600s by von Guericke, and he did experiments on the decompression and compression limits of animals' lungs. And as stated in the website, The History of Scuba Diving, this will move development further towards a greater understanding of the hazards of deep diving. So if you dive deep, the more compressed your lungs become the deeper you go, so he wanted to test that. So moving on to the 1700s, diving evolved into an easier way to stay underwater longer. So in 1715, John Lethbridge invented this dive engine, which is a cylinder, and compressed air was supplied from the surface, and it went down into this cylinder, and no water could get inside here. And the person could stick their arms out and do salvage work or look for stuff underwater. And you could stay underwater for 30 minutes at 60 feet, so it was pretty cool. And then in the 1800s, diving equipment shrunk to just a helmet and that supplied the air. Charles Anthony Dean invented a smoke helmet for fighting fires, which later they converted it into a diving helmet, which is pretty cool. And so this was held on by weights to the person's head, and a hose would be through the top of this hole, and it'd go up to the surface and supply air to the diver. And the diver, the suit was not attached to the helmet, so the diver couldn't bend over or he'd drown. So it was really dangerous back then. And I just wanted to show how different the mask looks now from the mask back then. So this is a whole lot safer now than it was back then, and you could see a whole lot more going underwater. And then later, his Augustus Seebig changed the suit out for a rubber one and it attached to the helmet, so it made it a whole lot safer for divers. And then in the late 1800s, diving evolved into a more advanced stage. Benet Rouquaillard and Auguste de Nez-Rouse invented the first steel scuba tank, and the scuba tank only contained 250 to 350 psi. So compared to ours now, we go down with 3,000 psi, so that's really small. So you couldn't stand it for very long. And this was placed on the diver's back, and it had a hose attached to it that went up to the top that supplied compressed air to the scuba diver. And then the tank was attached to a hose to the mouthpiece, so it supplied air to the scuba diver. And then the scuba diver could unhook this hose leading to the surface anytime he wanted to walk around. So it was pretty cool. And then in 1950, diving became more of a sport. They had, people would often buy equipment at sporting goods stores. And when you went diving, you didn't need any certification back then. And some people would service their own equipment. So it wasn't as safe, but it got safer. And I just wanted to show the difference in the regulators. So this is what regulator we have now. And then that's what they had back then. So they'd breathe through that mouthpiece. And then it's a whole lot safer, obviously, now. So this is the mouthpiece we breathe through now. So I just wanted to show how much more high-tech it is now than it was back then. And it's a whole lot safer. And then in 1960s, more people wanted to do it because TV shows were coming out about it. Sea Hunt came out. It was about scuba diving. It was more about the technical side of diving. And then another TV show came out called Flipper, which portrayed like the recreational side of diving, where you could go with dolphins, and it was a more recreational sport. And during the 1600s, a submersible pressure gauge, a personal flotation device, and watch were utilized in the standard diving equipment. So it was a whole lot more safer in the 1960s than it was like in the 1800s. And as stated in the article in the story of scuba diving, in 1966, Patty was born, and the rest they say is history. So Patty is a scuba diving place that was invented back in 1966 and is still around today. In the 1880s, diving became more of what it is today. Companies made it safer and comfortable for everyone interested, so kids could dive and women could dive now. And they greatly improved the alternate air source and made mouthpieces and fins more comfortable. I want to go back actually. Whoops. Hold on. I want to show you a picture of the flippers that look completely different than they do now. Hold on. Okay, I just wanted to show how the flippers then how they look like that and how now they look like this. So they're a little bit more easier to use and you can move around the water better than you could then. And then this is just a picture of a dive boat for a dive resort. And it shows how more popularized it became and more people wanted to do it. And today, diving is now more of a leisure sport. And companies are still finding new ways to improve the equipment and make it safer. And this is out of the Science of Diving book. Today they have whole lines of women VCs and wetsuits, so women are now able to dive with their own wetsuits and stuff. Advanced courses are now proving to be popular because they are much safer than they were back then. So it has been quite a journey. You have seen scuba equipment starting with the 1600s, going through the 1800s, and ending with what it has become today. I hope you all have learned a bit about how scuba equipment evolved to what it is today. The end.